Welcome everyone to the Green-Eyed Ram. I'm Ruthie. Recently I was asked why I named my channel the Green-Eyed Ram. Well, I have green eyes and my initials are RAM, so therefore I am the Green-Eyed Ram. It's kind of simple. Anyways, what have I been up to? Well, what I haven't been up to is vlogging, unfortunately. So hi, if I haven't seen you in a long time, you haven't heard from me. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, I do post there probably more frequently than I do here on YouTube. But that being said, I have a lot to talk about today. We've been on quite a few adventures, and let me see, what should I start with? Adventures. Some of you know, not only am I a maker, creator, artist, but I'm a chocolate maker, and I am the owner of Altissimo Chocolate. Now, Altissimo Chocolate is a bean-to-bar chocolate company, factory. I actually make chocolate using only heirloom cacao or beans that are from the original ancestral trees. There is a lot of modified cacao out there these days. In fact, I believe at this time there are 16 certified heirloom cacao plantations in the world. 4 of them are in Ecuador, and of those 4 I work directly with them and some really small farms who have the trees with the heirloom cacao that has not yet been certified, because it's quite a process. However, it's kind of like the way of the tomato was years ago. The tomato used to be, you know, this odd different shapes and beautiful flavors and aromas, and once it was modified to meet the requirements of all the industrial changes that happen in our society and production and people wanting pretty fruit, it changed. And in the process of changing, it lost its flavor and aroma. It's still red and perfectly round. Well, the same thing happened with cacao. In Ecuador in the early, I believe, 1920s, or probably earlier, I don't quote me on the actual date, I've forgotten this very second, Ecuador was hit with a virus that almost wiped out all of the cacao. And as a result of that, scientists who are extremely smart got very creative and created trees that would be able to defend themselves against these viruses, witch's broom and other things that would wipe out the cacao. Well, in so doing, they made these modified plants and trees that produce frequently. Every couple of weeks they can harvest, and they have a lot of beans, but it lost the flavor and aroma, so we don't use those ones. So I choose to use only the cacao that comes from these ancestral trees, these original trees, because the aroma and flavor is better and more potent and has humongous tasting notes. So why am I talking about chocolate on a maker, knitter, artist podcast? Well, the podcast or YouTube video is my life, and that's part of my life. And it kind of segues into what I've been doing. So why am I talking about cacao and chocolate on my channel? Well, where I usually talk about knitting and artistic things, creative things. Well, cacao for me is very creative, for one thing. Making chocolate is a hands-on thing. But not only that, it is a part of my life, and as a part of my life, it helps me to kind of gives me opportunities. And one of the latest opportunities I had was I went to Lima, Peru. And it was an adventure, let me tell you that. Just to begin with, getting there. So we left here, Ecuador, in Cuenca, Ecuador, 9 o'clock at night. Got on a bus, a double-decker bus. Not double-decker like you see the tours, but a 2-story bus. You might think of them like a Greyhound bus. It has fairly comfortable seats. Wasn't able to get a seat next to my husband, who was traveling with me, unfortunately. But it was still an adventure because I ended up being sat next to this young girl who was probably, maybe 9 or 10. And she was delightful and sweet, and shy, and so shy. And I tried to, get to know her and talk to her a little bit. And I brought out my knitting, and I had brought with me, I thought, okay, I need brainless knitting. I'm going to be on this bus almost 12 hours. Of course, it's going to be at night, but I'd like to get something done. And so brought out my knitting, and I brought my Angora. So that was fun. I showed her pictures on my phone of my rabbits. She'd never seen anything like that, and her eyes just lit up, and she watched intensely as I was knitting away, and she was watching every stitch and just mesmerized, and she kept touching. She kept trying to reach over and touch and touch. So I broke off a piece of my yarn. It's my own hand spun from my own rabbits, and I tried to explain that, and she just sort of, cocked her head and thought this gringo was a bit odd. But she was sweet. Anyways, she was on the bus with, I guess, 1, 2, 5 of her family, her mom and dad and a couple of brothers, and she's the oldest, and she was so sweet. She was taking care of the babies. If I offered her anything, she broke it off and passed it across the way and gave it to her little brother, who then, devoured it. And then the other little brother would peek his head up, and I would break off some more and or pass a chip or something. So it was really, really sweet. But she kept touching, and she was like mesmerized by the sensation of the Angora. And so that was really exciting for me to watch a little one light up. That's one of my favorite things in the world, is watching children learn something new and be inspired by it. So I didn't knit very long on that ride because it got very dark in the bus, and we're traveling through the Andes, and there's really not much light from the overhead. And anyways, tried to sleep. It was not pleasant. We arrived in Piura, not Piura, it's Piura, Piura, P-I-U-R-A, Piura, in the early hours of the day. So it was really interesting getting there, having traveled through the mountains. We live in a rather cool climate. You can see it's overcast today. And it was warm there, very warm. Got off the bus. My husband had been to this town before, so he was familiar with how it worked. Ended up meeting a wonderful lady who worked in the restroom. She cleaned and tended to the restroom. It turned out that I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and in talking with her, I found out she was too, and how wonderful. She said, don't worry, I know you need to get a chip for your phone, because now, our phones aren't going to work and everything. Leave your luggage here, I'll guard it for you. You go. I have a friend who's traveling. She's here right now, but she has some things to do in the city too. She'll take you to where you need to get your chip for your phone. And so she was just wonderful also. This lady helped us get to the different shops we needed to go to, and go through the process we needed to go through, and argue with people. She was arguing with the taxi driver who wanted to charge us, I think it was 15 soles for a chip for a phone, and she was like outraged, and she was saying things like, I'm from Peru, and how dare you take advantage of these foreigners, and he's like, this is my business. And it was interesting, but we had someone taking on our battle for us. So we ended up getting our tips, and then we went from there to the airport, where we took a flight to Lima, and then we arrived in Lima. And it's not a long flight, about an hour, I think. And the reason we did it that way is that it's outrageous to fly from Ecuador to Peru, even though it's super close. I mean, it's like from one state to the other, or one province to the other, depending on where you live. And but it's outrageously expensive to fly from Ecuador to Lima. So we took the bus, and then we took a $60 flight from, which sometimes can be even cheaper than that, depending on how much time you give it and order your tickets. But it was about $60 to fly from there to Lima. Notice how I didn't say the name of the city again because I don't want to get it wrong. Anyways, got to Lima. It was a lovely day, a little overcast. We stayed in a segment of the town, of the city, called Miraflores, which is right at the water's edge. They're preparing for the Olympics. No, the American Games, Deportes Americanos. So some big event was coming up. It's since passed. It was in July. So they were preparing for that. So a lot of construction going on. And for some reason in my mind, I know I checked the weather, and the weather said that it would be in the 60s, 70s. And I thought, oh, we live in that. It should be fine. You know, sun comes out. It's Peru. It's going to be warm. It wasn't. It was not warm. It was cool. It was overcast. It was chilly. It was rainy. And it was an odd city. I mean, it had some really beautiful parts, and the coast is pretty, but it felt very different than Ecuador feels, especially Cuenca. Cuenca is much more historical buildings, and it's quite a safe. I mean, yes, I have to look at, like, it's got millions more people, obviously, so it's busier in Lima than here in Cuenca. We only have 500,000 people. So, you know, there is a difference in that. But culturally, there was a difference too. But we explored and we walked, and I looked for yarn. I looked and looked, and you would think it was not easy. A lot of acrylic, just like here. A lot of acrylic, some mixed Angora, not Angora, I've forgotten. Alpaca and acrylic, and then we walked to blocks and blocks and blocks from where we were staying. We walked to this mercado where I was able to speak to someone who said, oh yeah, we have baby alpaca, the baby alpaca. So I was able to get some of that and bring home a little bit of that. So I wanted to have something from Peru that I could make something with. So I was able to pick that up, different skeins of brown and teal and a little golden, but I'm not going to show that to you right now because once I have an idea of what I'm going to make with it, then I'll introduce you to it. It's no point in just demonstrating something. Okay, so then the food. Oh my gosh. The one thing I love about Peru is the food. The food is incredible. We went to this restaurant. Well, after doing all this walking forever, and I should have written down the name of the restaurant. I will, let me think if I can recall it. Insert here the name. Okay. So what happened was, we'd walked all this way, and I get grumpy when I'm hungry. So I was getting grumpy, and I knew I was getting hungry, and my poor husband, he's like, okay, best ceviche in Lima. And up pops this restaurant, and it's 4 blocks away from where we are. And we have our little maps.me. Everybody, I'm gonna just caveat here, a little insert information. Maps.me is an amazing application. I recommend it to everyone, no matter where you live. It's, first of all, free, doesn't use internet, doesn't use your cell data, so you can be anywhere. It works off a satellite, and it's gotten me out of the jungle. So Maps.me is a free app that you can download. You download the country that you want maps for, and it literally works like a GPS with your phone, and then you just put the point where you want to go, and you can find it, you can search on it, you can make notes on the map and make new points of places where maybe you're staying and you want to get back to, and it will literally walk you through, and it talks to you in a number of different languages, actually. Obviously, for me, most easily is English. So it will turn left here, turn right here, go down this rondella, take the third exit, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, we used our Maps.me application to find the restaurant, except for somehow we walked 2 blocks the wrong direction to begin with. So we had to walk all the way back, and not small blocks either, quite a ways. And now I'm really hungry. And we get there, and it's a very nondescript building in this kind of, who knows where I am, in the middle of Lima, Peru. And there's a bench outside. A woman is sitting outside on this bench, and she's drinking a glass of wine, and there's people standing at the door. And we go in, and they're, oh, sorry, it's going to be 2 hours before you can come in. Oh, I was devastated. I was so... But I was trying to put on a happy face because, you know, we're traveling and we're in Lima, and I should have a good attitude, except for I'm hungry. So, anyways, my husband says, don't worry, I'll go take care of it. He goes inside, comes back out and says, I'll get you a drink, you can sit outside. It's not like I can sit outside and there's like bistros, you know, tables and chairs and things. There's nothing. There's like a bench, and that's it, like a street bench. And my leg, I have a bad knee, and my leg's bothering me, and I'm getting a little cranky. And he goes, okay. So he goes in, and the next thing I know, he says, come, come, come. I'm like, what? So I come in. Well, he's befriended a gentleman who is originally from Cuba, who lives in Florida, has a girlfriend in Guayaquil, Ecuador, is negotiating a deal in Lima, and he's traveling by himself. He comes to this restaurant all the time. He says, don't even worry about it. Don't worry. We just, you know, the hallway literally is where, like, the waiting, there's a bar, there's the actual restaurant, and then there's the hallway. He says, sit with me. There's a little tiny table, but there's little uncomfortable little wooden stools, but, you know, whatever. You're going to get fed. And it's awesome. You're going to enjoy it. Just come. And he tells me the story of how, you know, my giant husband, this man is not so tall, and my husband is 6'6" almost, or was. And he's like, this giant man is like nudging in on me, and I'm thinking, you know, maybe I need to say something to him. And the next thing I know, they're buds, and we're sitting at the same table. So this amazing place is really interesting. I'll insert some pictures of the food because it was so good. Like, I can't even explain how delicious the ceviche is. And ceviche is the process they use to cook fish, but it's raw. It's for the most part. It's done in a lemon, and the acids from the lemon ferment or preserve or do something. Anyways, I don't know exactly. I should probably, before I go spieling on about it. But it was so good. And basically you choose the fish. They have this like wall of heads of fish stuck in ice, and you choose a fish, and the waiter comes out and he says, we said, you know, we'd never been there before, and he says, oh, what would you like? And my husband says, oh, do you have a menu? He goes, I am your menu. Just like that. I am your menu. Okay. Don't know what that means, but go ahead and tell me, you know, we've never been here before. He says, well, you just have to say how you want your fish. What do you want? And we're like, we don't know. And the gentleman sitting next to us says, oh, you just do it like this, do it like that, have the soup and do da 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 da. And we're like, okay, like that, like what he just said. And in no time at all, they come out and they start serving you dish after dish of what they've done with this fish. It starts with a ceviche, and then it has kind of a fried version of something, and then they do a broth with the remaining fish that's left over that you've got from your order. And it was incredible. And it was just so incredible. And I had no idea. And you wouldn't know this place even exists. It's kind of like, it's so nondescript on the outside, but literally you would have had to wait 2 hours, and people do. wait a long time just to get into the restaurant. Not a fancy place, but so good. So good. Anyways, so that was Lima. And we went to the Salon de Cacao, which was really interesting, and learned a lot and met a lot of people, and were able to purchase some molds and some things for the factory. So that was really good. Then, coming back. Oh, yeah. Coming back. The adventure of returning home. Another story. Okay, so we take the flight back to Peru again. But now we're there, and it's hot. It's really, really hot. And we arrive in the morning, like 11 o'clock or so. And our bus doesn't leave until 8 or 9 again. And my husband says, well, why don't you, or why don't we take a bus to Mancora? And we're very familiar with Mancora. Well, not very, but we've been there, and it's incredible, the beach, and we know the hotel. And so I said, okay, but it's not going to be a bus. It's going to be a van, a crowded van, which is just, everything is always an adventure with us. So we go to, and we're waiting for the van to fill, and they're like, yes, this is where you're going to be. And we're like, okay, we're going to take a van. It's 3 or 4 hours in the van, but it fills. It's like people keep coming and coming and coming and coming, and every seat was filled in this van, and it was hot. And oh, I forgot to mention my adventure on the airplane. So flying to Lima, I'm all excited, and I've got, I'm gonna knit. No, I'm sorry, I got my story completely backwards. It was coming back from Lima. I had my project I had pulled out. I was going to knit some socks. I was going to start on this project, and I'm all in the airplane, busy, knitting away, doing my little thing, thinking, oh, I'm making progress, and I've got my little thing here. And yeah, so flight attendant, stewardess, I'm just going to say that because I'm, wasn't impressed. I had to put my knitting away because my pointing needles might hurt somebody. Okay, am I being sarcastic? Pretty much, yeah. Am I being unreasonable? Maybe. Really? My knitting needles are going to hurt somebody. They're too pointy. I was not happy. I was like, I just want to knit. I just want to do this to pass the time. I've never had anybody tell me to put my knitting away. I wasn't very patient. But I did do it. I didn't argue. I didn't make a fuss. I wanted to, but I didn't. I, grumbled to myself, stuffed my things away. Anyways, so now I'm on the van going to Mancora, 4 hours. And I'm like, I am going to knit. I have time. It's daylight. I don't have to worry, But again, I do not get to sit with my husband. So I have a gentleman sitting next to me. I will insert picture here. gentleman who patiently fell asleep next to me and leaned on me while I'm busy knitting. So, anyways, so we get to Mancora. In the meantime, prior to that, I had tried to contact the place where we wanted to stay and couldn't get a room. I mean, I literally couldn't, the phone wouldn't connect, the internet wouldn't connect, the booking wouldn't allow me to book, even though it said there were vacancies, so that was good. But I'm not so good, even though I like to be spontaneous, I am not so good at going places and not knowing where I'm going to spend the night. I like to know ahead of time that. So we got there after the bus ride, which was really warm. Took our little moto taxi, which is an adventure in and of itself. You know, two big gringos sitting in the back of a motor taxi. I will also insert video here. And happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you.
How many years is it? 400. We're in the motor taxi, Mancora, and it's kind of struggling to get up the hill. Anisha? So we get to the hotel, and well, it's Mancora Beach Bungalows. Lovely place. If you get to Mancora, if you get there, you will enjoy it. And last time we were there, we stayed 5 days, and the food in the restaurant, again, that's what introduced me to Peruvian ceviche, which was amazing. The restaurant is amazing. We sat, we got there literally. You know, I should just trust my husband to be right all the time, and I don't. I should. And if he sees this video, he'll be shaking his head saying, don't you so, don't you so. But he said, we'll go there, we'll be comfortable, we'll sleep well, we'll enjoy a beautiful sunset, because he knows the sunsets in Peru are incredible, and we'll be right at the beach. And literally, it was. And we had 10 minutes to sit down, get a glass of wine, and watch the sun go down. And that's what we did. And we spent the night there. Each and every room has a beautiful balcony, spacious balcony with a hammock. And that's one of my favorite things, is to sit in the hammock comfortably and read a book. Instead, this time I was knitting. But I was, you know, enjoying the breeze and the ocean, and it was just so lovely. But, of course, so the problem was, we thought we would catch the bus the next day from there, which we knew would only be a 5 or 6 hour ride home. No bus. No buses until 11 o'clock at night. So we had to spend the day. Oh, terrible thing. We just relaxed. Enjoyed each other's company and rested and sat in the hammock and drank wine and enjoyed another sunset before we had to go find the bus, which was also another big adventure, because there's not a terminal in Mancora. There are vendors, little shops that are sort of tourist shops that sell tickets for things, buses. But there's no place. There's no, this is the bus station. This is where you catch the bus. This is, you know, it was, no, go over here. We go, it's down there, and you just wait. You just wait right there. And we're like, are you sure we wait right here? And so my husband had gone across the street, because there was a bus stop, a local bus stop, and ask some of the local people, like, is this where the bus stops? And they're like, I don't know. And we were on the wrong side of the road for the direction that we wanted to go. So we couldn't understand, why are we waiting over here if like, does the bus turn around? Oh yeah, it turns around, no problem. The guy in the shop says, yeah, it turns around. It comes right here, no problem. It comes right here. It does not. So the bus came across the street, which is like 4 lanes wide, and we're on the wrong side of the street, and we're hauling our luggage and running across and trying to get, into the bus. It was fine. We got on the bus. We were in the lower portion of a double-decker bus again, but it was quite comfortable. I mean, it's really not comfortable. Like, I wouldn't say, oh, you're gonna just, put your feet up and relax. They have what appears to be a footrest. But when you're as tall as I am and as big as I am, South Americans are very small people generally. Just generally, not all, but just generally. So things are made for smaller people. And so you're too tall for one thing, and something doesn't meet your back, and and then it's at a wrong angle because it's angled for short people, and so your legs dangle at the wrong. Anyways, not comfortable. But gratefully, it wasn't full. So the seat next to me was empty, and my husband sat in the other aisle, and he had 2 seats to himself, so you could move around and try to get comfortable. And we came home. So made it back from Peru. So that's the travel part. What else is new? Let's see. What else is new? What else is new? I've been doing a lot of creative things. This, for example, I'll show you a full version of this in a minute. I have pulled out my sewing machine again because, I say tall. I'm not really tall. I lie and say I'm 5'7". I'm probably 5'5", 5'6". And, a size North American size 16, 18, probably 18. And there is nothing. There is no clothes for me in South America. None. There's a very sad experience trying to fit into anything. So I don't even bother. It just doesn't exist. So because it doesn't exist, I started making things, which is really interesting. I had recently purchased from a friend who is moving back to Australia her sewing machine, and I hadn't used it at all. And I had another friend, who was from Colorado, and she borrowed my sewing machine and was doing some things for her apartment, getting it ready. And she gave it back to me and said, "Oh, your sewing machine is so great." And I was like, I haven't even used it. So I thought, well, I'm going to pull it out. Went online, and here's the funny thing. I don't know, it's funny to me anyways. There was a time in my life when I used to live in a ski resort in Canada called Whistler in British Columbia. And I remember, dating myself now, I was like 87 probably, 88, 89, somewhere around there, when I had come down from Whistler, down from the mountain to the big city of Vancouver, and wanted to buy an album, some music. I walked into this record store. There's no albums. There's no albums. Everything was a CD. Everything was already changed over, and I had missed it. Somehow I had been so out of touch. I had lived on this mountain doing my life and totally missed the changeover from albums, record albums, vinyls, to CD. And it just blew me away when that happened. And I remember specifically thinking, how did that happen? I mean, it was at a time when technology was really moving along quickly, and I had a computer, but it was DOS. It wasn't, there were no application, there was no Windows, there was nothing like that. Anyways, So the same thing happened to me again, not albums and CDs, but in the world of making things. I had recently listened to a podcast, a really interesting, and it would be helpful if I could remember names and things, but I didn't make a mental note of it. But I listened to this story about this woman who she went to Mexico and was teaching in Mexico and started doing some sewing and making garments. And then she came back from having lived there for, I don't know, a couple of years, and had developed her skill and started making garments and making patterns. Oh, the wind is blowing my camera, sorry. So, making patterns, where was I? The point of my story is, I didn't know, I couldn't in my mind understand the concept that a sewing pattern could be put into a PDF, because I'd never done that. I'd only ever gone to the fabric store in North America and purchased, opened those big drawers, or sat for a long time looking at those big catalog books, deciding on which pattern I was going to purchase and which design I wanted to make. And then I would, go through the drawer and hope that that pattern had my size available. And then when I found it, then I would find the fabric that would go, and you would walk all through the fabric store. And it was a process. It was the process I understood. Well, now, in the digital age, you just go online, find the design you like. It's a PDF. You print it, you tape it together, and cut it out, and away you go. And you've got your pattern. Imagine that. Gosh, how do these things happen where I just feel so stupid? I mean, like chunks of things changing in the world of how I've learned to do it is completely different. And then I thought, this really opened up my world, because I don't have to, first of all, how convenient. You don't have to go to a fabric store. You don't have to spend hours sitting on an uncomfortable chair at a table flipping through pages of a book. I can do that at home. I can use my tablet, and I can Pinterest, and I can easily search in the comfort of my own home what I want to make. And I found some, and then the issue was fabric. I actually had brought 4 yards of fabric, linen. One is a green, and the other is a kind of purple, that I had brought with me in hopes of finding a tailor here that would make me some clothes, because A, I didn't have a sewing machine, and B, there's no pattern, and I met someone here she says, everywhere, like there's loads and loads of seamstresses and suit makers and people here. You just go in, they measure you up, and before long you have an outfit. And that seems to be the way often it is done. Another method. But I thought, I know how to sew. I mean, that's something I did years ago and learned and enjoyed and wanted to do. So I thought, I can do this. So I began with, it was so funny because Bryn Holmes, is it Bryn Holmes? Yeah. A great designer. I had bought a couple of dresses when I was visiting my son last year or the year before in Canada, in Vancouver, and Granville Island, actually. Anyone from there would know. Beautiful linen dress, a couple of them. One was a short sleeve, one was a no sleeve, and one was a 3/4 length sleeve. All kind of different styles, but linen and comfortable and beautiful. So I took the green fabric and I decided, you know what, this is so simple. Why don't I just use the dress I have as my pattern, and I'll, cut around it. And so I put the sleeves of one, connected it to the dress that draped of the other, and before you know it, I had a dress, and I was so excited, and I was so thrilled. And it's posted on Instagram. I'll insert a photo here of it. Well, once I made one, that was it. I was hooked again. I was excited. I was like, I got a dress. So I went out and bought some fabric and found some more patterns online, and this is one of them. And away I went, and gung-ho. So in fact, four dresses. The green one, the brown one, the linen one, this one. Yeah, four. And they're fun. They're fun and they're funky and they're different. Each of them had their techniques, I guess is the expression. This one has some really deep pockets, which I think are super fun, and drapey fabric, and the other one has ruffles, and I thought, you know what, fun. So I got some new dresses out of it, and that was kind of my adventure. So I'll show you those. Now, so as far as knitting goes, what have I been doing with knitting? Let me get you my knitting. So as for knitting, I do have a finished object. One. Now, can you say it's finished if you haven't tied in your ends? All right, so this is my Serena socks, and they are, oh, I should have this ready for you. They are a design by Jenny Alderbrandt. I downloaded the pattern from Ravelry, and these are made with merino sock yarn, and I loved it. The adventure with these socks, I learned a lot. I really did. I learned a lot. First of all, I learned that I should be more discreet about my knitting on airplanes. But so the color work in this sock, my gauge completely changed, and I got all the way down to doing the heel flap and thought, oh, I'm doing really good. I had to check the gauge. Everything was on task. My gauge wasn't the problem. The size was the problem, and it didn't fit. I couldn't get it over my foot. I literally toe in, and that was it. I couldn't get it past the heel. I couldn't get it up, and I was so frustrated, and I disappointed. Anyways, it turned out to be a beautiful sock. Now these have not been blocked, nor have the ends been tied in, but the pattern is really easy to follow. The color work is beautiful. I got all the way to there and had to rip it all out and start over again. But what I did was I went up a needle size and to do the color work, because I guess I'm really tight in the color work, and that's not an uncommon thing. Apparently, lots of people go through that. But what I liked about it was the pattern is all the way around. It's on the bottom of the foot as well as the top of the foot. So it's a full-on unique pattern, and the only part that isn't patterned are the toes. And the one thing I will say is when you do get to the toe, for my foot, and I wear an 8.5 women's, I think that's a 42, there's not much room for toe. When you get there, it's almost at the end of your foot. So when I changed, instead of doing the decreases where you decrease one row and then you do a plain row, decrease and a plain row, I just decreased every row in order that it wasn't going to end up that much longer. So it worked out fine. And I like these socks, and they feel very comfortable. The only thing I will do different, and I'm actually considering going back in, is making it longer. I think I'd like a sock that actually goes over my calf, and because I like them to be statements. I don't want them being put in a shoe and then you don't see anything. So I was thinking I could wear them with dresses if they go up over my calf and to my knee. So the next socks I make are going to be knee highs. But these were a really good experiment. I have never knit socks for myself. I've knit socks for my son and for my husband, but I've never knit socks for myself. So that was a first. All right, now the other big project I was working on is this sweater right here. So let me show you. And this is called, I'm so disorganized, sorry. Of course, all my papers my book got dropped, and all my papers got mixed up, and one excuse after the other, I don't have things ready to explain. Oh, it is, oh dear, pause. It is the Entomologist by Danny Heraldi. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. This is a top-down seamless sweater. And I knit it, and it was doing so well, and I was dividing for the sleeves, and I decided that when I got to that place, I'm going to show you how pretty it is. Really pretty. I really like it. It's got this amazing pattern. The last sweater I made was supposed to be steeked, and I didn't steek it. This one I made, and I thought, it's pure wool, and oh, I know. Let me step back. When I cast this on for my size, literally 4 of the patterns, this much, was too big. It was too big by 4 of the patterns for this section here. And I thought, oh, horrible. So I pulled it all out, started again down to the size 36, which, you know, I figured if my size of 40 was going to be miles too big, I should go down to 36 and it'll fit, and it did. And I thought, oh, this is great. Why don't I make it into a cardigan and I'll steek it even though I didn't put in steeking stitches? Oh, how bad could that be? No, it's not bad. I steeked it. It worked out. The only problem is, because it's a yoked sweater, do you see how it kind of pulls out? Well, now it's pulling out, and it doesn't fit. So I've cut it, it's done, and even if I put a button band on that, it's not going to fit me. And so Anyways, I did do a little design at the bottom to add a little more color to it. And it's sitting there staked, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do. The yarn is beautiful. It's pure wool. It's gorgeous. I learned from my last sweater that I should alternate helical, I think it's called, knitting, where you knit with two balls of wool, alternating row after row, so that you don't get that color bleeding, you know, big patches of one. Even though it's from the same dye lot, it's not going to be exactly the same color, and you'll get splotches of pooling. And so I did that. I don't know if there's a rescue for this sweater for me to wear. You know, if I put the band on, did the arms, I could give it away. But do I want to give it away? I don't know that I want to give it away. It's a lot of work. I don't want to waste the yarn, since getting yarn here is a real challenge. So it's going to sit for a while until I decide I'll come up with some kind of creative answer to that. So it's a whip, and it's sitting, and my sheep agree. The other thing, the next thing that I've been working on is the Rena. Rena is a shawl that you can download for free, a pattern for free on Ravelry, the Rena. And so far, I've started it, and I'm using Rowan fine art sock yarn that I have. Let me pull this up so that you can see how it's coming. So this is the Rena. I'm just putting it across my chest, not that it's going to be worn that way, but it's still on the needles, and I've only done the first few rows. It's an interesting pattern. Likes and don't like so far. I really love the drop stitches, the texture that creates. I'm so not loving the garter stitch, because this wool has a variety of different colors in it. The way, let me see, can you see? Focus. The way it was dyed, segments are brown and gray and dark gray, and I think that if the garter stitch was actually not garter stitch and was stocking stitch, you might get a better view of the colors. You might be able to enjoy them a little better, but it does make a nice contrast against the kind of lacy bits. So my first time actually knitting a shawl. I've crocheted shawls, but I've never knit one, and I certainly the texture kind of feels funny to me. The stocking, the garter stitch, it's a bit rough. Maybe it's just the wool. When you feel the wool, it doesn't feel that way. When you feel the garter, you feel the bumps. And I think a stocking stitch. There's another pattern I found on Ravelry, also free, called I think it's called the Weekender, and it's by a Russian designer, and they use, it's almost identical to the pattern, very similar, except for where there is garter, there's stocking knit is stitching. So I might make that next in order to get I need some scarves anyways, but just to get something different. But I'm learning a lot, and I have never knit, and as you go, I've never knit anything like this. As you go along, of course, you start way down here with just three stitches. I'm not doing a terrible job showing you. And then each row, at the end of the row, it gets longer and longer and longer. So I imagine this is going to be quite huge, considering it's only supposed to be a one skein shawl, or a one ball shawl, but I'm not even like a quarter into this, and I've got quite a bit. So I imagine that it's going to be quite huge, which is great. I mean, it wraps around and all of that. But it's a quick knit. I'm enjoying it. The pattern's really easy to kind of get your mind around. So you can definitely watch something and do it. The socks were a bit more challenging. You had to focus. It wasn't motorcycle driving by. It wasn't mindless knitting. I mean, this is part of the pattern. So, you know, every single one of these little blocks is a color change. So it was, you know, you had to focus carefully on each row and, you know, don't mess up. And on this one, you're doing a chunk of garter, you're doing a chunk of the lace, and you're doing repeats of that over and over. So I think makes it very nice. So I'm enjoying that. It's a good, it's on. So that's that. In the back of my mind, I'm working on a pattern. I have a new chef working at my restaurant. His name is Sandy. He's a lovely young man. He recently approached me and asked me to knit him something. His mom is in India and she's quite ill. And I guess she has knit for him before, and he asked me would I knit him a sweater because he needs to feel loved by a mom, which warms my heart. So I'm trying to decide what I'm going to knit him and in what wool and what kind of pattern. He's a young guy. I want to make sure it's something he'll enjoy and not just, you know, have, that I'd like for him to feel confident wearing this garment. So I'm seriously considering it, and I'm doing research, trying to decide what I'm going to make. So there's that. Now, the next thing, next adventure. The next adventure is I was approached by one of the friends in our congregation who has sheep, and her mom has sheep. Typically here in Ecuador, most people raise sheep for the meat, for the lamb, and they shear them and they just burn it. They don't even compost it. They burn it. And so the quality of the fleece is not going to be that great. It could be even a merino sheep, but it's just that their experience is to raise these animals so to be butchered, and so they don't put much care and keeping into the fleece, which is fair enough. I mean, if it's for the food, who cares, right? So she approached me and said, I know you do things, I know you make things. I have this from our sheep. Would you like it? Would you? And I said, well, let me come see. And I got this giant bag, this big giant bag of the dirtiest fleece I could possibly get. But it was a mix of, I guess, I think she said there were three different sheep in this one bag. One is a kind of a black-brown, longer staple. The other, and then she says something about merino. So I've been washing and playing with it and experimenting with it, trying to see what I can do with it. I spun up some, and it was really rough. It was really, the texture, it's not something you'd want against your skin. It certainly wouldn't be bad for rugs. Which got my brain thinking, well, I could weave it, I could make rugs. And then I started felting and trying to see how well it responded to felting. And oh my goodness, it felt really, really well. So I started with making some dryer balls. I needle felted them into balls to begin with. Then I wrapped them in tulle and I put them through the wash a couple of times. As you know, as I did laundry, I threw them in. and they came out terrific. They're super cute. Uh, yes, and I'm glad you agree. The So I made some dryer balls with that, and I don't know if I'm going to continue to make more dryer balls, but it was really a good experience, and I learned that they responded well, and I certainly can make that as a product that I can sell. Now you can sell at the restaurant. Well, the restaurant is kind of a catch-all for a lot of things. It's a bistro, it's a restaurant, it's a cafe, it's, so I sell my goat's milk soap there. I can make the dryer balls and sell them there. Or just, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just use them for me. But so definitely one set for me. So I'll insert a picture here for you. So you can see what they look like. So as I'm experimenting, so I spent a couple of days. It's really, 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 really challenging getting this fleece clean. It's so dirty. I mean, it's not just, it's got everything in it. It's got bugs, it's got dirt, it's got the lanolin, of course, it's got everything. And so it's a real challenge. It's a lot of work cleaning this fleece, but it's my fleece and I get to have it, and it's a product. The thing is, here you have to remember that I live in Ecuador. South America doesn't have Amazon. Amazon doesn't come here. If they did come here, you may not, or you may or may not get your item, because it has to go through the importation process, and then there is no mail service. So if they can find you, I mean, most houses don't even have a number, so it's the White House on such and such road, and you have to describe the terrain. I mean, that's how you find things in Ecuador. Or, somebody mules it in for you. So really getting product to work with, and then you have to pay the additional price of, so it's an economic thing too. So I have this fleece. It may be dirty, I'm not complaining. It's just a lot of work to get that into a usable fiber. But it's a great fiber, and now my brain is like going crazy thinking of what can I make with this fiber. So I started, dyeing it. That's one thing I have been able to find is I have no idea what kind of dye it is. It literally comes in a rolled up package of paper, powder in a paper that looks like, a roll of quarters, that size, and with the name of the color, more or less, on the outside. And then they sold me some kind of an acidy thing that they said you use with it, and I said, how much? I don't know. They were like equal parts. Equal parts. Anyways, so I dyed up some of the different fleeces. So I cleaned it, I've dried it, I've carded it, hand carded, I've used my drum carder. It breaks, it's very brittle, and I don't know, maybe it's the soap I'm using, maybe it's the quality of the fleece, I don't know. But so now I have some colored fleece to work with, and now I'm really excited because I'm thinking of doing some needle felting things, wet felting and needle felting. So in the coming months, in the coming weeks, I've got some projects in mind, some things I'm going to make. So stay tuned. I can't imagine what I have next to show you. All I know is my Pinterest is full. I've been saving. I'm getting these ideas. I'm seeing other people's works. I'm seeing things that aren't even felt works that I can envision as what it would look like if it was felted. So that's my next little adventure, is doing some of that. And I'm keeping up on my knitting. I need to find another pattern for a garment. That was my goal this year, was to make garments for myself. And I don't have, my sweater didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. So that's life though, isn't it? Right? Things happen. We're challenged. Life goes on. And I'm really glad you spent some time with me here in Ecuador. I will include a bunch of pictures in this video of some of the things I've been talking about. And if there's anything that you want me to talk about Ecuador, about living here, or anything, let me know. And if you haven't already, please go down to the little button there and subscribe so you will be notified when I do another video. And I'm going to try to be more consistent. That is also one of my goals, to at least get a video out every couple of weeks. But nice to have a time. Try that one again. No editing here. Thank you for spending time with me, Ruthie, the green-eyed ram. See you next time. Bye. Lima, Peru, with the ocean roaring behind us. Exploring the Locamar shopping center.